Please.
Frank Besson,
Yeah.
Colonel Edmondson, Senator Guillory, John Kennedy. Here. Stephen LaFar,
Here.
Kevin Marcel,
Here.
Thurman Miller,
Here.
Andrea Hubbard. Here. Representative Pearson.
Here.
And Bobby Smith.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you. If we can rise and pledge and pray.
To the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lord Christ, Heavenly Father, God, we just come before your throne right now, God. We just pray right now that your Holy Spirit will fill this place. And God, that you will give us the knowledge that we need, the discernment to make the right decisions, and the courage and the faith to do the right thing, to represent these men and women well. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
If you can remain standing, I'd like to have a moment of silence. As you notice to my left, your right, Ms. Shirley Bird was a member of this board who passed away last week. And I'll make some further comments shortly, but if we can just have a moment of silence and respect for Ms. Shirley. Thank you. If I could just say one thing real quick about Ms. Shirley, which I think is certainly due. I've been knowing Ms. Shirley since I started with state police, and I can't tell you how much love Ms. Shirley had for state police. And her husband was a retired trooper, and her husband, Mr. Lloyd, had some illnesses where he couldn't drive, and she would bring him to all meetings and wouldn't miss a function, conventions and so on. And Ms. Shirley was always there, and I think her love was so strong for state police and for the troopers is what brought her here to this board. And she loved every minute of being here with the board, with the troopers and so on. And I know she will be greatly missed by all the troopers across the state. So I'm gonna miss her myself too, because I got to be pretty close to her. I used to drive her to board meetings when I started out on the board. And then of course Kevin picked up that role after I was transferred here to Baton Rouge. But I can't tell you how great of a woman she was, and she will be sadly missed. Next item on the agenda is the general public comments. Ms. Akers.
I'm Denise Akers, the General Counsel here. We just wanted to offer a time for public comment. This will just be addressing our discussion of adoption of rules regarding the public comment. This will not be with regard to the Act 859 issues. I did want to let people know after receiving some after receiving some comments from our original recommendation, we are going to be recommending to the board that we allow a period of up to 90 minutes for public comment, 3 to 5 minutes per person, depending on how many people signed up for a comment period. At this time, we could accept any public comment that wants to be made now.
If anybody wants to make any comments, again, this is just for the public comment policy. All right. Let's see.
So now would be appropriate time for the board to discuss the policy. You, as a board, have a right to adopt any reasonable rules with regard to public comment period. And what we were recommending to the board is to adopt a period of up to 90 minutes for public comment, 3 to 5 minutes per person, have the people submit comment cards ahead of time. There's actually a proposed policy and procedure in your booklet, and you were given this ahead of time. So that entire policy and procedure is what we were recommending, with the modification that instead of a 30-minute time limit, it be a 90-minute limit, and instead of the 2-minute limit per person, it would be a 3 to 5 minute, depending on how many people submit comment cards.
Dennis, some questions.
Yes, sir.
Denise, who came up with this policy?
It was a joint effort between the director, the assistant director, myself, and the chairman.
So the chairman, the assistant director, and the director?
Yes, Mr. Treasurer, we've never had public comment policy. We've never been on the radar in my 13 and a half years as director of this retirement system, and we found ourselves somewhat unprepared. So we contacted several other retirement systems and got their idea of a reasonable policy for public comment on these matters. And then it appeared that I got a lot of emails and we received a lot of phone calls. And with the help of Kim and Denise, we came back with this modified time period to allow up to 90 minutes and changing the 2 minutes per person to the 3 to 5 minutes per person to allow people who want to speak to have that opportunity and that right to do that today.
Explain to me the problem you're trying to solve.
It's not a problem, Mr. Kennedy, it's just that every board should adopt a policy for and procedure for the public comment period. We've actually, in the time I've been general counsel here, I don't believe we have ever had anyone try to even make a comment, so it's not been an issue that we needed to address, but we knew that we were going to have public comment today. So I advised the board that we should have some type of formal policy and procedure adopted.
Well, if you've never had a problem, then why do you want to have a rule that limits debate when you've never had a problem?
We're not, again, we have a board meeting set today for 3. We couldn't have public comment for 10 hours. That would be unreasonable. So I just thought that it would be time to have some type of policy adopted so that we would have some guidance now and in the future.
Well, I confess that I sit on over 30 boards and commissions, and I don't sit on one that limits comments. I don't sit on one that tries to curtail people's right to come and make their positions known. Now, we have a chairman, and I think it's within the chairman's discretion that if somebody is being disruptive or abusive of their right or goes on too long, then obviously the chairman should exercise his discretion. I know Senator Claytor is here and Representative Pearson is here. And the way it generally works at the legislature, I see Governor Edwards is here. The way it's generally worked at the legislature is the chairman has great discretion. I don't recall a legislative chairman ever telling somebody that they doing anything to try to deter people from speaking. If we had a problem in the past, I can understand that. But what I hear you telling me is we've never had a problem, so we're going to adopt a policy to limit debate to try to solve it. And I don't understand that.
Well, Mr. Kennedy, you're part of the board. The board gets to decide. We're just throwing it out for the board to decide whether a policy should be adopted today.
I understand. I'm just trying to understand where this came from. I mean, what were we trying to achieve here?
We were trying to achieve an orderly meeting today, Mr. Kennedy, because we expected there to be several people who wanted to talk, and we wanted to make sure everybody had an opportunity to talk who wanted to, and also allowed everybody to complete the day at a reasonable hour.
Has something happened so that you're expecting a disorderly meeting?
I don't mean disorderly, I meant just sufficient time so everybody could talk. We had no idea how many people would want to talk today.
Well, look, I think this is a mistake. I think it sends the wrong message. I think it makes the board look like we have something to hide. I think it sends a message to the system members that we don't really care what you say. We're busy, important people, but if you have something to say it quickly. And the original proposal was preposterous. To draw names out of a hat. Most of the people here, I venture to say, they put money in this system. And I can't support this. If you have a reason for doing it,
I don't think there was any ill will, Mr. Kennedy. I think it was just a proposal, because we as a board come up with that what we doing.
but we've never had a problem before, so all of a sudden.
I understand that, but that's why it's a proposal, because we can come up with whatever rule that we agree on.
With no disrespect, but it's a bad proposal. And I think it sends the wrong message, especially, I mean, we all know why we're here, okay?
Mr. Kennedy, are you aware how many speaker comment cards have been signed.
It doesn't matter to me, Earl.
Yeah, well, I'm
I'm
just
prepared to
saying,
stay here, I'm prepared to
I
stay here
understand.
till midnight to allow people to have their say.
and we are too. We
Why
are
do you
too.
want to curtail debate?
What I'm thinking to say is there are 6 people who have signed a card that would like to speak. We've allotted 90 minutes to do that. So there's more than enough time. It doesn't have to be limited to 2 to 5 minutes. I think we're all very open about this, John, and want to do the right thing. What happened was I was getting a lot of calls, I was getting a lot of emails, and I felt like there would be a lot more people who would be attending the meeting. That's why we moved it from our building over to the other location to this building here to allow more people to come and speak and have that right, as you described it, to do that. We have no intention to limit anybody in their
I
time.
think you've already succeeded, Earl. I mean, they probably aren't here because they saw a rule that said they had to do it in 2 minutes and their name had to be drawn out of the hat.
Well, it was a proposal. If that was any problem, it was a
And
proposal.
I just think it's a mistake. And I think you've already sent the wrong message.
Secretary Kenny, I have a question. You sit on approximately 30 boards. On any of those boards, there are no time restrictions?
No, we depend on it. We don't do it that way at bond commission. We depend on the chair. We depend on the good judgment of the taxpayers who are paying for things, and almost always they demonstrate good judgment. If somebody goes on for 20 minutes, the chairman will generally say, "Could you wrap up?" But to propose a 2-minute limit and your name gets drawn out of the hat, I just can't live with it.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to ask if we could, the board could possibly entertain a motion. I'd like to at least make a motion that we just defer action on that policy to another meeting. Since it doesn't seem, if that's, that would be a motion if I can do that. We defer it to another time.
I have no problem with that.
I'll second.
Motion by Representative Pearson, second by Mr. Cannon. We further public comment policy until later date. Any objection? See none, so moved. Moving on, if you look in your packets, we have the approval of the minutes of the July 16th meeting. You can take a look at that. If you have any questions.
Make a motion to accept the minutes.
Motion by Mr. Marcel, second by Thurman.
Second, man.
Any objections to second set of minutes of the meeting? See none, so moved. All right, this time this is a public comment section for the discussion of Act 859. I just ask, we'll call your name as you come up, and I just ask that you be respectful and you direct your comments towards the Act 859 itself. And our first up will be Mr. Alvin Edwards. You can look at the podium right here, Mr. Edwards.
I was passing in the hall and I saw more than 10 people in the room, so I stopped. I'm sure you know I have enough controversy dumped on me that I did not come here to get involved in a controversy. But I do want you to know that many of you served in the group while I was governor, and I was very proud of your service. I did everything that I could within budgetary limitations to make things easier for you, and did what I could to make your family life even better. Having said that, this is a non-political area, I'm not going to mention the fact that I, Senator Clayton, are running for Congress. But I recall that I always appointed as the superintendent of state police someone from your ranks who knew something about what it was to be a trooper. And I'm very proud of that. And I want to close by saying that I'm concerned that at all levels of government, in the recent years, it seems that public employees are the whipping boys of whoever wants to make a political issue out of something. Every chance they get, they denigrate the public employees. They hire you with a promise for certain retirement benefits if you serve so many years. And as the years go by, those benefits are eroded, and you find yourself wishing 30 years later that had you known that, you'd have never started in this business in the first place. So I'm going to ask you to maintain your vigilance. Let's make sure that we try to elect people who will respect you and will honor the commitments made by government to you when you become a state employee or a parish employee or a city employee. That kind of faith and confidence should be instilled in public employees, and I want you to know wherever I am, in whatever capacity I serve, you can count on me to do that, because I think it's a matter of honor. And if we do not honor our commitments to each other and to ourselves, how can people feel we will honor any commitments to them? Having said that, I want to wish you well and hope that in the long run this matter gets resolved to your satisfaction. And I thank you for just giving me the opportunity of saying hello and to thank you for your years of service. I was always proud of the troops. We never had a major scandal in the state police while I was governor. And I'm very proud of that, because we lived through some turbulent times. I was involved in scandals, undeserved of course, but that's my viewpoint. But you as a group never had that problem, and it made me very happy to know that. And I say thank you for just listening to me for a minute. I just wanted to say I appreciate you, and I hope that in some small way I can contribute further to making your life a little bit better. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris, for your comments and for being here. Next up is Senator Dan Clay.
Who's running the legislature?
Yeah, that's an interesting act to follow there. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with y'all, and I certainly appreciate that you're allowing all the public comment that's necessary. As we talked about earlier, we always want the public to be able to contribute as much as they can or want to. I would suggest that you consider streaming these meetings live. We do that in the Capitol for those that are unable to attend. But that's not the topic that I'm here on. I'm here on Act 859. I'm here because it didn't occur in an open and transparent manner. That's the legislature's fault. That's not your fault, as far as we ought to have better rules to address conference committee reports. But it happened. And in my view, it's an unconstitutional act. And your lawyer has outlined it, and others have outlined it for you as well. That it wasn't published properly. The public didn't have the right notice on it. Particularly your members didn't have the right notice to be able to appear. The amendment was not germane. The bill wasn't a single object. And there's an issue in my view about where this money's paid from as far as the experience account is concerned. So I would ask that you exercise your fiduciary duty and put it into this matter where it is. If I understand it correctly from what I've read in the public, the two affected members, directly affected members, have said they wouldn't accept it anyway. And I can appreciate that, and I take them at their word. But in the words of President Reagan, I'd like to trust and verify and put something in place so that that won't occur. So appreciate your service. Appreciate that you guys are now the ones in the hot seat instead of me for a change, and ask that you do your best to put it into this unconstitutional legislation. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Mr.
Senator, thanks for coming. What do you recommend that we do about this?
Well, number one, I recommend you don't pay. Nobody's made a claim for payment. Number two, I would suggest on the trust but verify side of things, that you go ahead and file suit on this. If those affected troopers stand by what they've said, of I won't accept, it would be a simple suit and a consent judgment, and it would all be done at the end of the day. So that's what I would recommend. I appreciate the desire to say, let's put it back in the legislature and let them fix it. But that's not until next year. You have the ability to, quote, fix it right now. File a lawsuit tomorrow, asking for an injunction, don't pay, and get a consent judgment, declaring it unconstitutional, which I think everybody agrees, and call it a day, go home.
Did you vote on this bill?
I sure did.
Did you understand what was in it?
Well, you know, to me, that's a completely embarrassing admission on my part. I voted no against this bill in its original form. I understood that it was officers not getting due process when they were being fired. I was concerned to make sure that the troopers got their due process, and I voted no. I didn't think it was happening correctly, but ultimately, when it came out on the floor, as it came out, I asked one of the authors, have you cured the problem that I had? They said, yes, we've cured that. And so I would say the entire, I can only speak for myself, I can't speak for anybody else. I was boondoggled on the matter and would never have voted for it and wouldn't have been caught that way if the notice had been done, if there had been notice that it was a non-germane amendment. And that's why we have to correct our own house, the legislature, and make sure that we have open, transparent committee reports. This is a function of the system over at Capitol, and again, I'm sorry that we're having to ask you to clean up this particular mess that was created at the Capitol, but if the rules had been followed and it's done in a constitutional manner, this wouldn't have occurred.
Well, I ask you that, Senator, not to put you on the spot. You're a fine senator, you do a great job. I'm just trying to understand, I'm still trying to understand what happened. Was the Senate aware, in your opinion, that this was, the amendment was going to give special treatment to two beneficiaries?
I can't speak for everybody, but I can tell you, I work very hard not to leave my seat.
I know you
to pay attention to what's going on, and as one of the most attentive, if not the most attentive, I did not catch this, but I certainly would have been aware if there had been advertisement, like there ought to be, that this was a retirement bill, not a due process bill as it relates to making sure that officers are treated fairly in the disciplinary process. So I don't think there was anybody sitting near me, I can't speak for beyond my little circle, that was aware that this was a retirement bill.
Well, I know you read all the bills, and I thank you for that. Not everybody does, and I appreciate that, and I thank you for your candor.
Thank you. Anybody else want to visit with me there? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clegg, for your comment. Representative Lsprb.
Thank you for letting me speak. I don't read all bills. To be honest with you, I do not read all bills. I trust when we have conference committees that you trust those 6 people in the committee that they're going to come forward with something productive. Now, I was walked as an absent vote. I don't know if I was on the Senate side, where I was, but I was not in the chamber of the town, so I did not vote. But probably voted for the bill. Probably voted for the bill. So all I'm asking is that you litigate. Give this thing a chance to be litigated. Let's see if it's constitutional. I'll support everything Senator Clay said. I think he's right on. We have to do a better job of transparency. I'm going to make a point to bring the legislation next session to try to put a conference committee to open more. I've served in one conference committee, one, in 7 years. And we didn't meet. I signed a paper when I was satisfied with the amendment or whatever we brought, and that was it. It was done. This needs to be brought in open. It's the only way because things like this will happen. So, not pointing the fingers, but I'm just asking that you vote to litigate this. Let's find if it's constitutional or not. That's all I'm asking. And I thank you. Let's share your questions. Thank you for giving the opportunity.
Tim Carberry.
My name's Tim Carberry, and I'm a state police retiree. I worked for 31 years with the state police and then served on this board for 11 years. A few of them as a chairman. I come to you today to just mainly to make sure we make a decision today. We don't need to let this drag out. You got a fire here, let's don't make it into a bonfire. I want everybody to understand that this retirement board and this retirement system and the staff had nothing to do with this act that was passed. This was done with errors in judgment by the State Police Command staff, by the legislature, and by the governor's office. But you got to fix it. I'm not going to speak much longer. I want to make sure y'all make a decision today. And my recommendation is to follow the direction of your director and the legal staff on what their recommendations are. Has anybody got any questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you for your past service, sir. Specifically, what do you think we ought to do to fix this problem?
Well, I think the bill's unconstitutional, but I'm not an attorney. I understand that, or a judge. Okay, so you got everybody saying you got two options here. Do you litigate, or do you just not pay the benefit and possibly have a lawsuit filed against the retirement system? And then you have litigation then. The only thing that concerns me a little bit about this on this litigation is the cost and where is the money going to come from to pay for that? You know, our retirement system. No money was coming out of this bill from COLA funds for retirees and widows. I hate to see money coming out of that fund to pay for this litigation. I think that's the thing. Does anybody got an idea, understand what it's going to cost to fix this? That's my question, Mr. Kennedy. You have an idea?
I think you could, to me, it'll be a declaratory judgment action. You won't have a lot of discovery. My guess is it won't get past the district court because the people who are for this bill will not come out in public and file an appeal. I think it can be done probably for $15,000 or less.
Yeah.
I think you could get a lot of volunteer support.
Right.
I would help. Doesn't make me an expert, but I teach state constitutional law at LSU. I'll certainly help on the briefs.
Well, that's the biggest thing. The litigation, I understand. If we go into that, we could probably get a quicker decision on this. Because if we don't, we're going to have to wait to see if somebody applies for retirement and what benefit they're going to get. And then if you decide you're not going to pay that benefit, then there may be a lawsuit then. So, I mean, that's the big question here. But I hate to see our retirement system having to pay a lot of money for something they had nothing to do with. Because we all know that act didn't come through this retirement board at all. Didn't go in front of retirement committees. It would just slip in the last day. So that's it. So my idea right now is to follow the recommendation of your director and your legal staff here. Anybody else have any questions? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tim, for coming. For your comments. Next up, Mr. Charlie Saltafamaggio. Want to comment?
Yeah, this is directed at Mr. Kennedy. You said that you would help out with whatever we decide to do as far as a lawsuit, what have you. In what capacity would you help out? You didn't make that clear. And as far as $15,000, you throwing a ballpark figure out at this time, but we know that's not. It's going to be way more than that.
Why do you know that?
Just the same way you know that it's going to be $15,000. I'm just taking a guess at it.
I understand your point, but I disagree. I've heard figures thrown out as much as $100,000. I think that's, in my opinion, ludicrous. To me, this issue is very simple. You either think this is a bad law or you think it's a good law. And if you think it's a bad law, the only way to have it declared null and void is to get it off the books. I understand the cost argument. I'll put my cost credentials up against anybody. But the potential cost of this, and I asked our actuary to be here today, he can talk about the potential cost, but just because somebody says they're not going to take benefits, this is community property law. If somebody gets a divorce, their spouse may not take the same position. If somebody dies, their heirs may not take the same position. If somebody says they're not going to take the benefits, they can come back and change their mind. I'm not saying they will or they won't. And I mean, I've never tried to personalize this, but the truth of the matter is that this act didn't just fall from heaven. I don't believe in immaculate conception except in one instance. And this isn't it. This bill came from somewhere. Now, the 5 members of the conference committee say they were misled. The governor says he was misled. So I'd like to know where this bill came from.
Sir, with all due respect, I was asking how would you help?
I'll be glad to help write the briefs. Jim Napper, who is on my staff, he's executive council treasurer. He's a former general counsel of one of the major banks in Louisiana. He will help. I bet you Senator Claytor will help. I think you'd be surprised at how much help you would get. And I don't think it'll get past the district court.
Thank you, sir.
I'm Charlie Sultan from Adjunct, retired trooper, and a lot of these questions are going to be answered, already been answered. I wanted to say, other than one. First off, I'm here because I'm a former board member also back in the mid-90s, and I'm here to give you my full support. And also, as I talked to 5 troopers in this audience over the last week, I asked them if they thought it'd be a good idea for Governor Edwards to come here and give you his support. That we think this is honorable board and y'all doing the right thing. Now there's a couple empty chairs here, and that's Edmund Evanson and Charlie Dupree. I don't know who started all this stuff, Mr. Kennedy, but I would like them to have been here so I can ask them if they did it. And my only question I want y'all to put up and discuss is what's going to happen from here on as far as either Edmondson or Dupree serving on this board, because certainly they went against their fiduciary duties. I sat on the board once, and if I were sitting here today, I'd have questions about them continuing to serve. Now, I know he sits as a colonel, and he sits on the board. Well, that's the case, and also he brought discredit to the state police in the fact that he's not here to answer my question. And I'm not saying this out of tune because I sent Mr. Edmondson the same thing I'm telling you. And I brought this to attention to Representative Bobby Smith yesterday. He was good enough to reply to me today, and we talked and I hugged and gave him a kiss because that's my representative up there. And he told me to sit down and I'm going to take care of it and everything's going to be right. All right? And I think that's what y'all are going to do. So I just give you my support.
Thank you for your comments. Robert Lamb.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Landry, and I've served 24 and a half years with the state police and retired in 2006. I stand before you asking you to litigate this issue with the Edmundston Amendment, Senate Bill 894. I know that it's always tough to do the right thing, but before this time, it seemed like doing the right thing was the norm for the state police, but for some reason it just seemed to go by the wayside. Do not let institutional pressure get to you and make you do something that's not the right thing to do. People that came before you that are retired have put up many sacrifices to get what they have today. But let's not let the legislature come back in next year and dictate what we can and cannot do as a retirement board. Let's not lose our drop. Let's not lose our 3.3% that we earn in retirement. Because there are a lot of legislators and politicians that are watching you today. Let's not forget, this was an underhanded, extremely unethical, illegal at best, and unconstitutional act reported by maybe a member or two of the retirement board. You have to litigate this as your counsel has suggested, and many other people who have spoken have said so today. This act that has passed has caused a bad light on the state police. It's unethical at best. It violates the code of conduct that was instilled in us as cadets in the State Police Academy. Greed and illegalities have no place in the state police organization or within the retirement board. As a board, you need to litigate this. You need to litigate it immediately so we won't face the long-term effects of financial loss to this fine institution.
Yes, sir. Mr. Landry,
Yes, sir.
with all due respect, you mentioned institutional pressure. What are you referring to?
I'm referring to that pressure that you may get from your subordinates, maybe your supervisors, maybe politicians, maybe people that have an influence on you about the way you vote. I consider that to be institutional pressure. That would be pressure of you to do something that would not be within what is done for the moral right and good of what you represent as a board member.
Would you be surprised if you heard that I have not received one email since the last board meeting? One email, one phone call, one visit from either the colonel staff or the governor's office on this topic?
It would not surprise me at all.
That's the truth.
I have no reason to disbelieve that. And, it just doesn't surprise me.
Thank you, Mr. Landry.
Thank you.
Robert Burns.
I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you today. I'm just going to emphasize one small factor when everybody brings their expertise to the table, and I am an active CPA. I think when you look at the relative dollar figures that are involved here, the amount that potentially could have gone, even if Treasurer Kennedy's estimate is accurate, the $15,000, in my layman's opinion, I'm not an attorney obviously, but I think that's probably high. I think it's probably a good, probably a pretty sound footing to say you would have attorneys who would volunteer for this, and it's my understanding that a state agency pays no filing fees to file the litigation, and if they ultimately prevail, and I think it's quite obvious this entity is going to prevail, they would not be held to filing fees even in the end. So under the accounting principle of materiality, I think if you weigh the $15,000 even, I think being liberal and giving Treasurer Kennedy his estimate, I know there was some, obviously some difference of opinion there about what it may cost, but you know, I am a counsel who try to hold costs down, and I think he may be a little high, but even if he's accurate, I think the $15,000, and I understand the recommendation of the report was to save whatever expense it is. And I guess I can only say that I wish that none of the members of the board, just like Mr. gentleman said, I wish that same level of diligence would have been in people's mindset when this initiative was proposed. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Continue to speak to you.
Matt Dism?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Sorry about that.
And just so you know, I'm one of the citizens that had initially complained about the public comment policy. I did feel at the time that it was meant to stifle comment.
We already talked about that.
Okay.
About this, 8:59.
Okay. Well, I do have 90 minutes, right?
You got 89.
Thank you, Frank. Driving in today on 110, it hit me as I drove past the mansion and the Capitol building that we wouldn't even be having this discussion here today had somebody done their due diligence when this bill was going through the process. And I realize now that it's in your agenda and your plate, and I do appreciate that you are taking the time to discuss this. I served prior with the state police. I left state police and went to the federal government. I did 22 and a half years with the federal government in law enforcement. I retired from the Treasury, Inspector General community, so I'm very much attuned and wanting good government. This bill is not good government. This bill does not pass the smell test. I think we all agree on that. I think we're here to find out how the board's going to handle their responsibilities and not wait for the legislature to deal with this in the next session. I'm afraid that the image of the state police has been tarnished by this bill, the way it was introduced and the way it was corruptly sent through the legislature. And I believe that this board has the opportunity to correct that. And it's time for the board to show that they represent the retirees and to do the right thing. I received an email yesterday from State Representative John Schroeder, who's my representative in Covington. And I just wanted to read that to you as well. It said, Mr. Isman, your question is a good one. Laws passed by the legislature are presumed to be constitutional until a court declares them not to be. This presumption guides government actions throughout the state. As a branch of the executive branch of government, you don't have the opportunity to decide which laws you're going to enforce and which laws you're not going to enforce. My recommendation is to take the actions that other speakers have recommended, take this to a district court, get it declared unconstitutional once and for all. Your members deserve that, and that would close the door forever on any other claimant filing an equal rights federal suit and coming in saying, I want the Edmondson treatment and I want a second bite of the apple. The lawsuit would prevent that once a court declares it unconstitutional. I thank you for your time, and I promise not to be disruptive.
We appreciate that. That's all. That's all for the public comments. Thank everyone for being here and for your comments. We appreciate it as a board. Moving on to item 7, the discussion of Act 859. I just want to say real quick, I want to thank the board and Mr. Phelps and Kim and the rest of the staff for your patience and your professionalism. I know we've went through a lot the last couple of weeks, and I know there's a lot of misinformation being put out there, a lot of criticism for us, for the board. So I just want to thank you, each and every one of you, for your patience and your professionalism throughout this process. I'd like to start out, I know we received a statement, where is mine, from Carl Edmondson. I'd like to have Chris McClellan, excuse me, read his statement, please.
A letter from Colonel Edmondson. Dear Chairman Besson, as the upcoming board meeting approaches, I have decided that it would be inappropriate for me to attend the meeting or send a proxy to serve in my absence. I believe I am precluded from voting, and I do not want my presence to serve as a distraction to the discussion of the special counsel report, nor do I want anyone to suggest that my presence would somehow be considered an indirect form of intimidation for members of the board. You and fellow board members have work to do, and my attendance should not provide a stage for political grandstanding for any members or attendees who might be so inclined. I am respectful of the responsibilities of the board and want to permit each member to discuss this matter without any perceived interference on my part. Out of all of the state citizens who have been urged by others to contact me and members of the board to express their outrage over Act 859, I've received less than a dozen emails. I attempted to respond to most of those individuals and explain how much of the information being communicated was and is incorrect. Moreover, I should note that I have not received one email or call from any active member of the system over the amendment's purported long-term impact. I can count on one hand the number of emails I've received from retired members or their surviving spouses. An attempt to connect political dots which do not actually exist is ultimately futile. Such attempts are at best uninformed of the facts and serve only as a personal agenda and also complicate the deliberations of the board. As you know, I have previously expressed concern with the manner in which the board was amended, and I have pledged not to accept the benefit provided for in the Act, which would impact my final retirement calculation. My decision remains unchanged today. I do not intend to seek nor accept the benefit under Act 859. I specifically and unequivocally waive any such entitlement under the Act. I fully support the statements from legislators and others that the bill should be repealed. Despite the special counsel's recommendation, I would strongly urge that as chairman, you ask the board to authorize the system attorneys to file the necessary documents to obtain a final declaratory judgment on this amendment. That judgment will provide the necessary finality to this matter. I also ask that you apologize on my behalf to the board, not only for my absence from the meeting, but also for the unjust criticism they have received as they attempted to permit the special counsel to do their work. I express gratitude to the board for its work and dedication to duty. I especially wish to thank the executive director, Owen Phelps, and his staff for their assistance and guidance as we have worked through this issue. The board is fortunate to have such respected leadership. Sincerely, Colonel Michael D. Edmondson, Deputy Secretary of Public Safety Services, Superintendent of Louisiana State Police.
Yes, sir.
I am sorry, sir, I did not get your name, I apologize.
Chris McClellan.
And what's your position?
My position? I'm a Louisiana State Trooper.
Okay. You work in the superintendent's office?
No, sir.
Okay, could I ask what you
I work at the State Police Academy.
Okay, with Calvin. Did the amendment originate with the state police, and who originated it?
I have no idea, sir.
Do you know who could provide that information?
No, sir.
Do you know, this letter is written by, I've tried not to personalize this, and I'm going to try to continue to do this. This letter there are two beneficiaries. This letter is written by one. And have y'all heard from the other beneficiary?
Sir, all I've been asked is to read the letter by the chairman that was sent to him. That's all I know.
Mr. Kennedy, if I might interject a couple of comments.
Sure.
Chris was here today as the driver for our board trustee, sitting just to your right, who is blind. Chris drove him here to the meeting today, and he was simply asked if he was comfortable in reading this letter. He had nothing whatsoever to do with the drafting or any other thing. As far as hearing from the other claimant here, I spoke to Louis Bouquet yesterday morning to get his address from him and to be sure that he was okay with everything that was going on and that he was still consistent in his opinion that he would not accept this benefit, and that was his response to me.
Chris, I apologize. You need to ask for a pay raise, man. I'm sorry. I thought you were with the superintendent's office.
No, sir.
Is there anybody here with the superintendent's office? Okay, thanks.
All right, moving on, I'd like to turn over to Ms. Akers and Mr. Plummer.
May I ask you just one other thing, Mr. Chairman, before we start on the legal part? One of the questions I'd ask is the cost. And I still don't have a handle on the cost. I know that our actuary is here. I was hoping that Charles could at least get us in the ballpark in terms of the cost and what we're talking about. Would that be okay?
Mr. Kennedy, you're referring to the cost of the bill itself, not the cost of litigation.
Oh, yes, sir. I'm sorry, I wasn't clear. The cost of the bill.
Yes.
And I've heard all kind of estimates, and some of them are ridiculously high. Some of them are, I don't know what the cost is, and I'm hoping Charles can tell us is what I'm trying to say.
Mr. Hall? Thank you for coming today.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Charles Hall. I'm the actuary for the Louisiana State Troopers retirement system. I've been the actuary for about 24 years. If you have a specific item that you...
How much does it cost?
The cost of the bill relative to the benefit improvements. And I had to price it for the current valuation process that we're involved in.
Could you speak in that mic, Charles?
I said that I had to price it for the current valuation process that we're in right now. was $359,159. That covers the increase in the benefits that the bill would have provided.
And what does that mean? I mean, if the bill takes effect for well, it's already taken effect, when the two beneficiaries retire, they get an extra amount of money than they would have otherwise but for the bill. How much is that on an annual basis?
That is a pretty close description of how the benefit improvement actually works, but not actually correct. The benefit improvement that the gentleman would have received would have been an enhancement to their benefit. But keeping in mind that they had already participated in DROP, the way that the amendment was drafted would be that they would receive a benefit based upon what they would have received had they not participated in DROP. And that benefit would then be adjusted because they had already participated in DROP, and that's a non-profitable election that they had made. So because they had existing DROP accounts, we could not just liquidate those. So we're not talking about a recension of the DROP election. What we're talking about is a way to calculate a benefit enhancement. And the benefit was designed to give them the benefit they would have received had they not participated in DROP. But since they did participate in DROP, that benefit enhancement would be reduced by an equivalent amount that you could annuitize that DROP account balance. So if the DROP account balance was equivalent to, say, a $500 a month annuity for the rest of their life, then that benefit enhancement was reduced by that amount of money. So, in fact, what we have is a benefit enhancement that is very similar to what we call an IDO, which is a benefit where the member can, at retirement, look at their maximum benefit that they had earned and make an election to receive a part of that maximum benefit as a lump sum. And if they make that election, then the amount of lump sum that they elect, not more than 36 months worth of benefits, is annuitized, and the maximum benefit, monthly benefit, is reduced by that equivalent annuity. So this is in effect what is happening with this piece of legislation, except that the instead of the annuity being reduced by up to 36 months of the benefits, it's being reduced by an annuitized value of the existing DROP account. And so that increases the benefit. And the benefit is an increase by a monthly amount that has been reduced by the annuitized value of the DROP account. That increase, annuitized over the participant's lifetime, the present value of that, in this case for both participants, turned out to have a value of $359,000.
And so the $359,000 is the present value?
That's correct.
What discount rate did you use?
The board approved discount rate for valuation purposes, which is 7%.
If you didn't discount the present value, just based on what the tables say about longevity, what would be the gross amount?
Oh, I could calculate that for you, but I don't know off the top of my head.
Can you give me in the ballpark? Is it like 10 times that, or?
I prefer to just give you the number. If you don't mind, I'd prefer to go back and calculate.
Yeah, if you could get it to me.
Sure.
Because I like to look at the discounted value as well as the gross value.
Well, keep in mind that it's discounted not only for interest, it's also discounted for mortality and morbidity.
Were you consulted on this bill?
I was consulted about a possible amendment that might take place.
When were you contacted?
I believe the last day of the session was a Monday, and I think I was contacted that preceding Friday.
Who contacted you?
Actually, the director of the retirement system indicated to me that a request had been made that I call a trooper to discuss a possible amendment to legislation that was being contemplated at the time. So I made the call and spoke to the trooper involved, and after some discussion, it was clear that they wanted to introduce some type of amendment that would provide an enhanced benefit. As you know, that when you talk to actuaries, that sometimes the communication level isn't what you would like for it to be. And my initial thought was that they were trying to rescind the drop, which I was totally opposed to. But in fact, that was not what they were trying to do, and never had any intention to rescind the drop. It was just a flaw in the communication. And so once it was resolved that they were talking about a benefit enhancement, the discussion revolved around prior benefit enhancements that had been made at the troopers' retirement system and other retirement systems, state retirement systems. And basically the issue came about is how the benefit enhancement could be calculated in light of the fact that a drop account did exist. And so the discussion evolved into treating it like an IBO equivalent benefit.
And what trooper were you asked to talk to?
Charlie Dupuy.
Was he handling the amendment, or who was handling the drafting? Who did the drafting?
He had a Senate staffer there with him that was going to actually draft him.
And who was that?
That was Ms. Laura Gilson.
Were you consulted after that at all?
I was consulted on, well, during that conversation that I had with him, once the concept of the benefit enhancement had been determined, I was asked if it would be all right if they sent me a copy of the draft of the proposed amendment to see if they had captured the benefit enhancement properly, as well as the funding of it. And so I did receive an email that indicated the initial draft. I had several concerns with the initial draft, and I rewrote part of it for them to ensure that the funding of it would be handled properly so as not to hurt the retirement fund. And I sent the email back. I then, over the weekend, Saturday or Sunday, got another email inquiring as to what the cost of the bill would be. At the time, it was believed that it was only going to affect one trooper. And the estimate was $300,000. It was a ballpark estimate. And I believe that's the only communication I had.
And who did you receive the emails from?
Ms. Sullivan.
Okay. So you originally thought, you were told it was only going to impact one beneficiary?
Yes.
When did you find out it would impact another?
Not until after the session began.
Did you do the actuarial note? I'm sure they must have consulted you.
I did not do an actuarial note other than to send an estimate as to what I thought the cost would be for one trooper.
Okay, all right. But you were first contacted on a Friday.
I believe that's correct, yes.
And the session ended, when did it end, Dan? Monday? Monday. Okay. Would you give me that, the gross figure? I understand the net present value. If you could give me the gross figure.
Certainly.
It would be very helpful. Thank you for your candor.
You talked about the IBO, that's what it's similar to, you said?
Yes.
And this was, and you said this benefit was given before, so I guess you use the same, you said this benefit was given before for other troopers?
No, we've used benefit enhancements in the past for not only the state troopers, but also other state retirement funds.
Okay. You have a question, Mr.?
Can I ask one more? Can I ask one more? I just want to be sure I understand this right. Is the benefit enhancement the same thing as more money?
Well, certainly what you're doing is you're adding another level that they've already approved. You're increasing the benefit.
That's increasing your retirement pay.
That's correct.
It's not like an extra health insurance or something like that.
No, it's not a bonus, it's not an add-on thing, it's just increasing the benefit. It's sort of like, when a group would lobby to have their accrual rate changed from 2.5% to 3%. That's a benefit enhancement, because it's done retroactively for all the services earned.
It's kind of similar to what we done in 2003, correct?
That's correct.
Mr. Chairman, just maybe one other comment, and it refers to the description that Charles used there of an initial benefit option. In the 13 and a half years that I've been director at the state police retirement system, we've had one trooper that I'm aware of that has used the IBO option, the initial benefit option, and he had a specific reason for wanting to do that. He knew exactly how much he needed per month to live on, and he needed a lump sum of money to pay down some bills, and that's what he did. It is a very cost-ineffective way for the trooper to receive a lump sum distribution, and that's why it is so infrequently used and only been used once in my tenure. So just for your information.
Can I give a point of clarification in my explanation? The reason that I used the analogy of the IBO is because that was what was used in the discussion in the drafting of the amendment. The reason it was used in the discussion in the drafting of the amendment was that when they were discussing the benefit enhancement, due to the fact that the member had already participated in drop, I felt like you could not give a benefit enhancement that would take them up to 100% of their current final adequate compensation benefit, because in this particular case, the individual did have 30 years of service, 330%, which would have been 100% of final average compensation. It wouldn't have been fair to do that in a benefit design, because the drop balance existed. So if you were going to give a benefit that brought the benefit up to 100% final average compensation, the fact that the drop account balance exists meant that there had to be some type of offset. And so if that annuity equivalent of the drop account balance were used to reduce the maximum benefit enhancement, then that would have made it equivalent or very similar to the IBO. It's not an IBO, but it would have made it similar to the IBO.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Phelps. You references Mr. Hall in 2003. This was done for the people on the board. Can you clarify what took place? Or how many people were affected?
When?
2003 came up.
It was a good number. I don't
Same type of benefit?
Yeah.
Was it the same type of benefit?
There was a benefit improvement. We couldn't change the benefit because of the fact that these people that participated in drop. I think there was a accrual increase or something like that. And
That
so,
was 2001, and the accrual was increased, and those who had gone into drop before that time were penalized, and the legislature came back and approved through the proper legislative process the recalculation of benefits for those individuals, and I believe the number was in the ballpark of 50 or 60 at that time, and there were another 15 or 20 who did not receive any benefit enhancement from that 2001 legislation, and in 2004, I believe it was, we came back with a 20% bonus provision that was sponsored by Senator Lambert Boissier, and it went through the House and Senate and was approved by the legislature and signed by the governor, giving those troopers who had gone into drop before 2001 and had received no increase in benefit from the 2001 legislation a 20% bonus on their retirement benefit. Those are the two examples of situations that have occurred, Stephen.
Was it one minimum of 20%? It could have been more than I thought.
No, it was a 20%. They got at least 20% increase there, everybody in that class.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Where did the idea come from, Charles, to take the money for the two beneficiaries out of the experience account?
from me,
From you?
yes,
Was it originally, where was the money originally coming from?
there was no original offer for money to come into the question. It was asked of me how it could be funded, because I was concerned about the funding of it, and I was the one that...
Who asked you that, if you could?
It was in the conversation with Charlie Duper. And I understand that there's a lot of misinformation, misunderstanding, but the reality of the situation is that the experience account, or accounts for the 4 state systems, were basically created to provide a mechanism for the Board of Trustees for board-sponsored benefit improvements to be funded through the experience account. And it was not just limited to retirees. It was designed for any type of benefit initially. And the reason I know this is because I designed the experience account. And it was done with the premise that we receive employer contributions and employee contributions. And the employer, before the experience accounts were created, received all the benefit of the investment improvements, or excess interest earnings, above what was needed for to cover the valuation rate. Those contributions earn interest and earn the excess interest as well. And so the part of the philosophy was that they would share in the excess interest. And this all came about because of the constitutional amendment, which required that we fund the system actuarially. And there was no way for the Board of Trustees of these 4 state systems to be able to fund the benefit improvements. So this was a mechanism that was designed to do that. And over the years, it's no secret that majority of the benefits that have been funded from the experience account have been COLAs. And over time, the retirees just assumed that it was exclusively for them. But the reality of the situation is that we have funded benefit improvements for survivor benefits out of lasers and teachers and other systems through the experience account. We've even swept balances of the experience account to reduce the unfunded accrued liability. We have used those experience accounts for a number of different issues. I suggested that we use the funds in the experience account because of this proposed amendment fit the criteria. And when I say fit the criteria, what I meant was my number one main concern wasn't whether or not this amendment was justified, good or bad, whatever. My number one concern was I going to be able to protect the retirement system? If I could take the money out of the experience account, I knew two things. One, that what we now know is Act 399 had already passed through the session. It just needed governor's signature, and we had every indication it was going to be signed. What that told me was that the experience accounts were going to be capped at certain amounts, depending upon our funding position. So on a go-forward basis, I could only put a certain amount of money into the experience account, and then it's capped. And then anything over that capped amount would revert back to reduce the employer contribution rate. So I knew that was in play. If I took the $359 million out of the experience account, the other thing that I knew was that I was going to meet the cap because state troopers already had sufficient funds in the experience account to grant the current COLA that was granted June 30, 2014. And they had probably enough, it was going to be close as to whether or not they could grant the second COLA. So if I took the money out of the experience account to pay for this benefit, it did a number of things. One, it assured that the benefit was going to be funded immediately on June 30, 2014. Secondly, based upon the projections that we had, we were going to exceed the 7% rate of return for this fiscal year as well, which meant that more money was going to be put into the experience account. So if I took the money out of the experience account, which we have done in the past, then I was going to put it right back in until I got to the cap, and then the excess would flow back to reduce the employer contribution. So it was going to be taken out for all of 1 second and then put back in immediately. And that's done in the valuation process. So, in my mind, the retirees were not going to be hurt because they weren't going to lose a dime with regards to what was going to be available for COLAs. And it permitted a mechanism so that the flow back would go back to the employer, who's the Department of Public Safety, who has to pay for it through their budget. So if you were going to fund this benefit directly, it would have been funded through that mechanism.
Besides Ms. Sullivan, Margale, and the Deputy Superintendent, did you deal with anybody else on this bill?
Mr. Chairman, this gentleman, we got specifics in front of us. We know what we're here for. This is a board meeting on this bill that we're talking about. This gentleman is not on trial. We sitting here and he's having to call out names and you know, pay attention to other people. We have specifics in front of us. He's not on trial. He shouldn't have to call all these names out, and we know who done what or what have you. Can we move on with the business? This gentleman is, again, he's not on trial. This is not court.
I don't think he's on trial either. I never suggested he was. Can you tell me who else you dealt with, Charles?
I didn't meet with anybody, but I had telephone conversations. Mr. Phelps asked me to call the trooper. I did, and I felt incumbent upon myself that I should follow over back and tell him exactly what transpired. And naturally, he was upset.
But did you talk with any other legislators or any other members of the system, or just?
No, as a matter of fact, I didn't even know. If the amendment was actually going to be tacked onto a bill, and if it was, I didn't even know what bill it was going to be tacked onto.
We didn't either. Thank you, Charles.
All right, moving on. I think I already had a few people tapping the shoulder and asking for a restroom break. Would anybody be opposed to a 5-minute recess for a restroom break? So 5 minutes.
Same thing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, trustees. I'm Bob Klausner, and you've been asked by Ms. Akers and your executive director to work with you on this one. I have done this with the system before, and have the privilege of working with a number of retirement systems here in Louisiana. I've worked with our distinguished legislative representatives on an annual basis for many years. What I'd like to do, since I think doesn't seem to be much confusion about the criticisms of the Act, I'd like to focus on the two things that have been the subject of discussion today, although I'll be happy to answer any questions you have, which is the issue of remedy. And the question is, should the system be filing suit? Here's the reason why.
Can we ask you questions about the legal part? Is that okay?
You can ask me whatever you want. That's why I'm here. I work for you.
And first, thanks for your good work, Bob. I mean, and you too. Denise, excellent opinion, and I'm very impressed. On the legal part, what about, what do you have an opinion about whether the legislation impairs the obligation of contracts, which is a violation of the state constitution?
Well, I think that could be raised in the context of the use of the experience account. Because if the experience account was designed to be used for the enhancement of benefits and reduction of unfunded accrued actuarial liability, what concerned Ms. Akers and myself, and why it was mentioned in the opinion, is because the use of the benefit, the use of that fund in lieu of an employer contribution, we believe impaired the rights of the membership to the exclusive use and benefit of that aspect of the fund. To that extent, Article 10, Section 29 of the Constitution says that Louisiana is one of only 8 states that has enshrined in its Constitution a specific contractual protection for pensions. As you know, Article 1 of the Louisiana Constitution also has a general impairment of contract provision, as do, I think, 47 of the state constitutions. But Louisiana's voters went a step further when they added Article 10, Section 29E. So the short answer, although it's really too late for that, the short answer to your question is yes, that argument would certainly be presented were that benefit to be implemented.
And is that based in part on the fact, well, let's do it another way. If I go into drop, I sign a contract with my system. Is that a contract?
Sure. As our courts have said with regard to drop agreements, there was a case involving the Sheriff's Pension Relief Fund from 10 years ago that said that signatures on drop contracts are not ornaments.
Okay. Interesting way of putting it.
That's what the First Circuit said on the other side of the lake over there. So,
what about equal protection of the laws? Did y'all look at that?
I did, and interestingly enough, I didn't find that there would be an equal protection issue, and Denise and I spoke about this at length for this reason. Generally, pension contracts or generally any contract involving economic rights, it stands much lower in the scale of where courts will look at equal protection and excuse government's making of differentiation. And the best jurisprudence on that issue actually came from the Fifth Circuit when the Mississippi Highway Patrol some years ago created a second tier. And 2 troopers that were riding in the same car, the guy on the right-hand side said, how come the guy driving the car is getting a better benefit than me just because he's older? And what the Fifth Circuit said is, as long as there's a rational basis for the difference, you can do that. Now, the question is, was there a rational basis for this particular difference? There are cases where there have been benefits exclusively for a small group or even a single individual, and courts have excused it if government articulated the view that it was necessary to either retain that person's services or whatever reason. I felt it was, in light of the very strong other issues, I felt and Denise felt it was too attenuated from the central point to consider raising it in the opinion.
So when you talk about rational basis, basically the courts will go and ask the question, does the reason that the legislature passed it have a rational basis?
Correct.
as opposed to, for example, if you try to limit free speech or religion, which are fundamental, then the government has to show some extraordinarily compelling state interest, and the burden rests on government to justify this intrusion into the personal liberties. Economic regulation such as this falls into a much, government is given broader discretion with regard to the creation of categories. I mean, it's the same reason why do you have to be 18 to vote or 21 to drink, or, you know, and when I was a kid, 18 to get drafted. So the answer is because.
Will it matter, Bob, in the argument if that 6 members of the conference committee and the governor, suppose they did affidavits and said we were misled? We didn't know it just impacted a couple of people. Would that matter in terms of rational basis?
Generally, no, because Louisiana generally does not permit the evidence from a legislator about their intent in passing a law. And I think there's a sound legal evidentiary reason for that. Plus, generally, one branch of government, meaning the judiciary, shouldn't be questioning the wisdom of the other. And as some of you may know, I represented the Retired State Employees Association along with Bob Tarza from New Orleans, challenging the cash balance legislation.
You did a pretty good job.
Lots of it. And Brother Dapper sat right next to me in the boardroom and whispered in my ear occasionally. But if you have a strong point, I've been doing this for 38 years, and if you got a strong point, don't go to a weaker one. So I generally try to disregard that, which I think has a less potent argument. I think the things that Ms. Akers and I focused on in the opinion are, in our view, you know, of course, laws are presumed constitutional until the judicial branch says otherwise, but we believe they make a compelling argument for the invalidity of the law.
Okay. Last one, legal. Is the fact that the actuarial note showed up 3 days after the bill passed, does that violate any rules or laws or due process in your opinion?
The actuarial note is supposed to accompany the bill. Mm-hmm. And if you look generally at the legislature, by the way, has an excellent access to their documents on the state's website. I wondered about that myself. I don't think there was anything, nothing came to my attention that said it was untoward, but it's difficult to know what the impact is. If they had Mr. Hall's note, then that would have been sufficient to guide them, but if there had been a dispute between Mr. Richmond, who was the state's actuary's note had been, and Mr. Hall's, then it would have been problematic, as I understand their notes ultimately agreed.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, thanks.
I think I want to get to the heart of what I think y'all want to talk about, and that is, what do you do about this? This is going to be the first time probably in a very long legal career where I tell people, please don't send me any money. And the reason why we think the board shouldn't file a lawsuit is A, it's a lot cheaper if somebody sues you. That wouldn't cost you anything. If any taxpayer, and Louisiana has a very broad access to the courts for taxpayers, and I have, by the way, for those who don't know, I'm a taxpayer here too. I have a home in New Orleans. And so being concerned with the public fisc as well. The question is, how much of an impact do you need? The answer is about nothing, very little, and a taxpayer can challenge it. However, a government officer generally cannot challenge the statute which directs them to do something. And there's an unbroken line of, and we would have addressed it in the opinion had I known that this was such a concern. But Denise and I spent the last couple of days looking at a long line of cases dating back to 1895. And it's called the Herd Rule, H-E-A-R-D, because that was the name of the 1895 case involving the New Orleans Canal and Railway Company, or Banking Company. And that goes all the way up, interestingly enough, to the cash balance lawsuit in 2013. So I think the board doesn't have the standing to bring a lawsuit. the easiest thing for you would be, now I don't generally counsel civil disobedience to clients either, but I figured somebody would sue you eventually to either make you pay or keep you from paying. Or the legislature will repeal the law, and I know they'll have to, I think pre-filing starts in January for retirement bills. So you would know long before. I will tell you, the cash balance case moved very quickly.
Mr. Clausen, excuse me, I have a question.
Yeah.
So just to reiterate, are you saying that we don't have a ground to stand on to sue?
I think you don't have the, I don't think you have the legal, you don't satisfy the legal doctrine of standing. Standing, in order to be a plaintiff in a lawsuit, you have to have a legal interest to act. Now, one could say, well, doesn't an agency have the authority to seek a declaration as to whether or not it should pay? Now, if you did that, I still don't think you can challenge the constitutionality of the statute, which really is at the heart of what ought to happen. The better thing to do would be for a taxpayer, and there's millions of them in Louisiana, to sue the system and say, we want an injunction prohibiting you. It's the first time I'm ever telling somebody how to sue a client either. We want an injunction to prohibit you from enforcing Act 859. Now, you would then be called upon, do you defend the case or not? And I tell you, don't defend it. Confess judgment. If the Attorney General wants to come in and defend the statute, that's his prerogative under our constitutional structure from the executive branch. I would be surprised if that were going to happen. Although I can't speak for Attorney General Caldwell. But in that instance, you'd incur no cost. You just write, your answer would be admitted. And then you send that in, and you probably pay $2 to file the paper over in the courthouse, and you're finished. That's the way to get this done. And any person who is a taxpayer could file that lawsuit. I think that's one of the reasons why when the cash balance litigation went along, it was the Retired State Employees Association and a group of taxpayers filed that litigation. Now, I've been advised that there may be a lawsuit that's coming today or tomorrow. I haven't spoken other than Denise said she received some advice from a lawyer contending that he represents some unidentified plaintiffs who are going to file such a case. If you do get sued, don't defend it. That solves your problem. But I think that you would risk wasting money by trying to file the suit yourself, because the judge on his or her own determination could say, I don't think you satisfy the standing requirement, because it could create a precedent, unfortunate effect, that agencies could challenge what the legislature tells them they ought to be doing. And you may well see a judge who acted independently in that fashion, because as you know, jurisdictional questions, which are standing, are always the first thing resolved in any litigation. So that's why I don't recommend that you sue. Now, as far as cost, I can only tell you what the last... Oh, sorry.
Can I ask you one thing?
Anything else?
But you wanted to go first, so you go ahead and go first.
I think you were about to get to my question. Have you pursued litigation on behalf of a board in the past, and if so, how much did it cost in reference to the similar situation?
I have defended litigation on behalf of boards, and it's expensive. It costs, you know, I can tell you in litigation that mouse runs really fast in the treadmill, and the lawyers are generally the primary beneficiaries of litigation. But I can tell you from the cash balance litigation that I have no idea what the governor spent, but his lawyers were charging way more per hour than I was. And our end of it was about $75,000. Now that was to take it to trial. There were actually 3 appearances in court, 1 motion hearing on exceptions, which took an hour or 2, and there was briefing, of course. There was the trial in front of Judge Morvan downtown, and that took 1 day. And then the oral argument in the Supreme Court, which took an hour. And now, of course, there's briefing and research and all of those things that goes along with it. So that case generated well into 6 figures if you put both sides together as to the money that was spent. Like I said, ideally, because you have no interest in defending this statute, somebody sues you. That's the best thing. And by not acting today, I don't think you breach any of your fiduciary duties. I mean, I'm well familiar with the provisions of Title 11, 261, and the sections which follow it, and what is the fiduciary duty. I teach this to retirement systems in almost 30 states and the territory of American Samoa. And the answer is always, it's pretty far away, and the answer is always the same. Know what your job is, but also know what your job isn't. And in this particular case, I don't think it's your job under the structure of the law in Louisiana to be the plaintiff in this lawsuit. But I would also tell you that you have no duty to defend such a case if brought against you, because you happen to agree that the statute is invalid, and you would be acting appropriately in not defending.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
On the standing issue, let me do the cause first. And I understand the cash balance. You did without taking sides in the lawsuit, you did a great job, and you won. I know the governor fought like a tiger.
They did, they had fine lawyers too.
I don't think in this litigation, regardless of who brings the lawsuit, it'll be as disputed, because I think that we may never find out who was behind this bill, but whoever it was, I don't think they're going to come into a court of law and stand up and say, we got caught, but we're still for it. So I think it'll be cheaper. I think if you do a declaratory judgment, it'll be cheaper. But in terms of the standing, what if the board designated a single board member as a taxpayer to be the plaintiff? Would he have standing?
If he or she were a taxpayer in Louisiana, yes, they would have standing. Any of you would have standing.
Individual?
Yes, but I don't think you can use system assets to pay for it. Okay. That's the difference.
What if I filed a lawsuit as a taxpayer?
Against the board?
Against the system, against the board, saying, I want an injunction, and I think this law is a bad law, bad policy, and unconstitutional because it was passed inappropriately. Can the board consent to that judgment? Or to those pleadings?
In my opinion, yes, the board could consent to the judgment, but you can't vote in that thing.
Understand.
If you're the plaintiff, you're precluded under Title 42 from voting, but yes, the board could consent to a judgment.
Well, that's our solution.
That's why I mentioned it.
You're a damn smart lawyer.
That's what my mother used to say.
I mean, that's our solution. I'll file the lawsuit. And the no offense, I'll have to name the system as the defendant, but I'll file a lawsuit and ask for an injunction. And then the board can do whatever it thinks is appropriate.
As long as you don't bring it in your capacity as treasurer or trustee, you bring it
Believe me, I
as a
pay
citizen and
taxes.
taxpayer.
I pay taxes like everybody else. I'll bring it in my individual capacity. And that seems to me will solve the problem.
And what I would recommend happen is if such a lawsuit were filed that you convene a meeting within the appropriate period, because you have 20 days, right? 15? 15 days after you get served to do something. I would recommend you convene quickly and take a vote as to whether you're going to defend the case or consent to a judgment. And then, of course, in such a case, because you're challenging the constitutionality of the statute, notice would also have to be given to the Attorney General, who may or may not choose to defend. And for example, he didn't get in the cash balance case. The governor hired the lawyer. So that would be the most elegant solution to your problem.
Probably should use the Attorney General.
So.
Okay. I mean, I volunteer to do that. I mean, it will save us money. I'll foot the bill as the plaintiff, personally. And y'all can make the decision you want to make at that point. I'll have you served. Not personally. I move that we do that.
So ask a few more questions.
Mr. Gloucester, I appreciate that, Treasurer Kennedy, and I'd like to get to that but I did have a few questions.
Sure.
As a legislator, I'm hearing that number one, you cannot rule obviously on constitutionality of a bill. I mean, it has to be a judge ruling on that.
I can pronounce all I want, but it doesn't matter.
But you're telling a board to ignore law. I mean, basically, before we're getting into that, you're telling the board to ignore laws that are passed by the legislature, and somehow you don't think that goes against the fiduciary duty of the board to uphold the laws? I mean, because the board does, I believe, as they're sworn in, swear to uphold the constitutionality of the laws of the state. So I'm really confused here.
What I told them is don't sue now. I did say later that if nobody does anything, then maybe you take a shot at it. But I think you have other fiduciary duties, which is don't spend the system money if there's a legal reason why you can't, which gets into the standing question. You're in a difficult situation, and that's why I offered the suggestion that somebody in the room file a lawsuit who is a taxpayer, and then we just get out of the way. I don't counsel civil disobedience. I said, don't do anything yet, because I think the thing's going to get repealed. Now, I started to mention the cash balance case started in August and ended the following June when the Supreme Court issued its opinion. So that's what, 10 months? The legislature's going to have been here and done something long before any litigation would be over, absent a consent judgment and absent an appeal. And if the board's the defendant and it consents to a judgment, there isn't going to be an appeal. So that's the quickest way to go. As I said, I think I said on page something, I said if nobody does it, then maybe you'll have to revisit this question. But I said it would be better to wait and see if someone sues you. You have no obligation to run out. The issue's not even right yet. Neither one of these people has applied for benefit. They're both working. And my view was to see if you can force somebody to sue you.
Okay. As I'm saying, you're not saying that never the board at some point in time would need to, because if we go back, it's kind of difficult to retroactively go take away something that has been granted, because I think you've argued before our committee that once a benefit is granted, it cannot be diminished or impaired.
Except if the benefit wasn't, if a law is invalid, it never conferred a benefit. This law is void ab initio, in my view. And
valid, it has to be declared invalid.
Somebody's going to have to do that. And if someone had made a demand for the payment and you didn't pay it, then as you know, as is the custom in lots of places, the person who didn't get the money who wanted the money sues the person who has the money. In which case, then you'd be in a position to defend. I don't think you have standing to be a plaintiff. If somebody sues you, then you've got no choice but to litigate in the action.
But if we're here to represent the interest of the beneficiaries of the system, and now that you have told us as our representation and that you believe absolutely and provide evidence of why the law is unconstitutional, then we are, I think, a little bit in a crack, because number one, as fiduciaries, we're supposed to, I would believe, supposed to uphold the law as it's written. And now, number two, acting as fiduciaries, we also have this other issue where you, and we've been informed by counsel that the law is unconstitutional. And then we still don't go towards at least seeking a declaratory judgment, which I would hope wouldn't be as much and probably wouldn't be fought as well. I don't see why we wouldn't have standing while we're representing the beneficiaries of the system.
Because your Supreme Court has said suing in an official capacity, a government officer cannot challenge the statute under which they operate. And I didn't write that, but that's been your jurisprudence for 120 years. And quite frankly, it's the jurisprudence in other states as well. Because the chaos that would happen if one branch of government sued the other branch of the government is significant. What I told you is, don't act now. Wait till the thing comes to a head, and then you'll make a decision about what you have to do. The only reason this is at a head now is because it's a matter of some public interest. But no one's applied for the benefit that I'm aware of. And so therefore, it's also not right for determination. And judges don't like to issue declarations under the Section 963 of the Code of Civil Procedure that are academic in nature. And this one would end up being academic if there's no application. So I think we would end up spending money and not getting there, whereas that's why I gave you the suggestion today that there is a way to bring it to a head, where you don't have to expend system money, nor do you have to be the one that challenges the statute. You're under no obligation to defend the statute. The Attorney General is the one who defends constitutionality, not agencies. The agency may have an interest in doing so to protect its authority.
Hold the law as a board of fiduciary. I understand where you're going, but if someone did apply for the benefit tomorrow, then you're saying that we simply should just ignore it and let them file suit.
No, I tell them no because of the reasons that we outlined in the opinion and make them sue you. I don't think that's inappropriate. Because I think you might get sued on the other end by beneficiaries who said, oh, you knew the thing was unconstitutional, yet you're handing out the cheese anyway, and you would be between Scylla and Charybdis, as the Greek legends go. And the better answer for you, and as someone who's advising a fiduciary, is to say, in that case, you bring the matter to a head by doing that. And it happens all the time. But if you got to the point, if you got to this later point, maybe you would one of you could bring a declaratory relief action as a citizen. And that's what I told you. If you want to do it now, do it now. But don't do it as a trustee. You can't use the system money. I don't know, what's it cost to file a lawsuit here? A couple more months. Wow, got expensive. But basically for $500, a citizen could bring this matter to an end and relieve you of the future obligation to act if the issue came to a head.
And it still, I'm finishing here, but it still concerns me a little bit because it seems as though we're saying, legislature, any law you pass, simply because perhaps an advice of counsel, good or bad, just don't follow it and let someone come and sue you to make you follow the law. I think the precedent is concerning, to myself and perhaps Senator Guillory, that just is basically saying, just don't follow the law.
Kevin,
and wait till someone.
what do you think we should do? I mean, I really want to.
Well, I do think the lawsuit, my question is on the advice to say that we just ignore law. And I'm a little offended as a legislator because it's like, we don't need to go to Baton Rouge anymore, and I'm sure a lot of people would probably glad to get it. But there is a purpose, for the balancing powers and for the legislators. And if we're sitting there saying it's like to someone else, just ignore law, we're saying to every agency in government, and that concerns me.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, please.
I don't think that's what I disagree with you for this reason. Suppose the legislature passed a law tomorrow that said, write a check for $600 million and give it to the governor and use it for something else. You wouldn't do it. You would absolutely not do it.
I'd give them one of a bounce.
Right. And because you would know that the law was invalid, and despite the fact that the law said what it said, it may even have been passed in accordance with the right procedure, but since it was taking money which belonged to the members and beneficiaries of the system, then the right answer would be make the governor sue you to get the money. And that's because you now have to balance what are, in essence, conflicting responsibilities under Title 11 with what it says to do under this bill that was tacked on to a Police Bill of Rights bill. And that's why trustees are entitled to exercise their discretion. And I don't think you get to pick the laws you want to follow or don't want to follow. I'm suggesting that the better course of action for you was to precipitate a set of circumstances which enabled you to have your voice heard on the invalidity. And that's why I made the suggestion to you today about the easiest, cheapest, and fastest way to do it. And the one that involves the least amount of lawyer time, which would probably get me drummed out of the union. But,
Well, that's it for me now. Thank you.
Anybody else have anything? I'm going to come back to the remedy, but while we have you here, We have a letter from one of the beneficiaries saying he's not going to accept the benefits. Do we have anything in writing from the other beneficiary?
Mr. Treasurer, we do not. I've spoken to Mr. Bouquet 2 or 3 times. He has confirmed each time that he will not be taking that benefit, but I have nothing in writing. We were waiting for the meeting today to determine that outcome.
I'm pretty sure he'd be willing to put something in writing if we wanted to, or ask him to, I should say.
If a beneficiary says in writing, I don't want to take the benefits, can he change his mind?
Depends on the nature of the waiver. You know, you're allowed to waive your constitutional rights, and if they had engaged in a knowing and intelligent waiver, the answer is no, that you can't change your mind. I mean, for example, criminal defendants waive their right under the 5th Amendment of the Constitution or to the 4th Amendment on searches and seizures all the time. And if it was a knowing and intelligent decision, they don't have to go back later and say, I changed my mind. On the civil side, parties to divorce proceedings agree to split because of the community property law belongs to both of them anyway. But one member says to the other one, I will relinquish my claim to your pension if you give me the house.
Sure.
And, 10 years later, if the house had termites, you don't get to go back and change your mind. So as long as the procedure by which the waiver took place was consistent with the civil code and with the Constitution, then I would be satisfied that that's one that you couldn't change your mind about.
So if a beneficiary did change his mind, he would allege that he didn't waive it knowingly and voluntarily?
Yes, and then you would be able to either defend that one or not as you chose to do so. And we do have people that, I mentioned that sheriff's case from some years ago. The guy had a drop and he decided that he didn't like his beneficiary selection. Not the person, but the benefit option that he chose, and he tried to change it in the courthouse, and the court said, you made a knowing and intelligent decision to take A and not B, and it's too late.
Are these benefits in Act 859 community property?
Oh, I think any benefit, assuming that the benefit was validly granted, let's take that for a second, yes, it would be community property, but if the law is determined to have been void ab initio, meaning invalid from the beginning, then no property right was created, and it would not involve, say, a former spouse or a current spouse who may have had some community in it, depending on the circumstances of their situation.
Well, right now, we know we have a law, and all laws are presumed constitutional, so
Yes. Today it's community property. If the court says otherwise, it will have never been community property.
If it's community property and one of the beneficiaries has waived his right, we don't know whether it's knowingly and all that can be litigated, but suppose that he, God forbid, is involved in a divorce proceeding, could his spouse claim part of the benefit?
Possibly. If you assume for that purpose of that question that the benefit was not void ab initio, then yes, the spouse could claim that they gave away something that belonged to me.
So, suppose one of the beneficiaries, God forbid, passes, could his heirs claim the benefit?
Only to the extent that it was an inheritable interest. If under the statute, the interest, say, could only go to a spouse or only go to a child, then the answer is no, as to heirs generally. But if it was a generally inheritable interest under the structure of the plan, then yes, an heir could claim.
Let me get back to the representatives, and I think...
But just one last thing, Treasurer, I'm sorry. That's generally not something that goes through a succession, unless it's a return of contributions. Generally, it's a distribution directly to a beneficiary outside of an estate.
Let me get back to the representatives asking questions, and I know the senator has concerns about this as well. I'm glad to hear both chairmen of the retirement systems. When the legislature passes a budget, it comes to me, and there are different lines saying, Kennedy, write this check for this amount. Everybody has an opinion on the way public money ought to be spent, and sometimes I disagree with what the legislature's done. But I don't have a choice but to write that check. I mean, I've been directed by the legislature, and I think what Kevin is saying, if I get this wrong, tell me, is that we got a law here. It's a bad law in my judgment, but it's the law. It passed the legislature. For whatever reason, the governor signed it. And it is the law. And we're sitting here saying, well, we're just going to choose not to follow it. Do we have that discretion?
Because it conflicts with your other responsibilities under Title 11, I think you can.
Okay.
Or what you can do is precipitate the litigation which would allow it to be cleared. The unfortunate thing that the standing issue presents is that the board can't question the issue. Now, certainly, I think the board could file a declaratory relief action that says, we're in doubt as to whether we have an obligation to pay, but you can't challenge the constitutionality of the statute. And I know that sounds like lawyer hair splitting, but it won't ultimately solve your problem because you can't advocate as a system for the finding that it's unconstitutional. The declaratory relief statute in Louisiana is one of 47 states that adopted the Uniform Declaratory Judgments Law, is to address doubts under either a contract or statute. And you certainly have doubts as to whether you should pay or shouldn't pay, because you have the conundrum that Representative Pearson raised. But somebody somewhere is going to have to advocate that the reason that you have the doubt is because you believe it's unconstitutional. And the court may say, well, that's a very good argument, Board of Trustees, but I don't think you have the standing to make it. And that's why I didn't find that to be the most useful remedy for you.
Okay. If we did file a lawsuit, the Attorney General would answer it.
Actually, the Attorney General would have the right to step in and defend the constitutionality of the statute to the extent that it was an injunction to prohibit the board from doing something. That's the judgment you could confess to.
The alternative would be for a taxpayer. I pay taxes. I could go file a lawsuit against the board and say, I need an injunction. I think this law is bad law, bad policy, and unconstitutional. And then the board would be within its rights to say, we agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if the board didn't appeal, and I didn't appeal,
End of that case.
Unless the Attorney General appealed.
And the Attorney General has the discretion to defend or not defend a case.
So if he thinks it's a good law, he can enter in, but we don't know that one way or the other.
We have no idea whether he'll enroll in the case or not. And I have not spoken with him in the past.
Well, I want to do, I know we all want to do what's right here. And, I mean, a lot's been said, a lot of which is beyond our control. Right? I mean, I think the state police as an institution is one of the institutions of government in Louisiana that people are most proud of. I really believe that. I do substitute teaching every now and then, and a lot of times, usually they only let me teach the middle grades, you know. And I always talk to the kids about what they want to do, you know, when they get out of school. And not a single time have I substitute taught that at least one kid didn't say, I'm going to be a state trooper. And you know, always, I mean, it always makes you feel good. And I do think this act has hurt the reputation of the state. And I think it's unfairly hurt the state police as an institution. So I think we ought to do something about it. And I think we all agree on that. Whatever I want to do, I want to do what's effective. I mean, I'm prepared, if that's what y'all want, I'm prepared to file this lawsuit. I'll pay the court cost myself. I share Kevin's concern about, I mean, I see his point. And I'm open to suggestions. Bob, I just want to see us do something because I've been around legislative sessions a long time, and I know you have too. too long, for me, too long. But it's hard to pass a bill. It's easy to kill a bill. It's easy to kill a bill. And I'm going to say it again, this bill didn't just pass for no reason. Somebody pushed hard for this. And I don't think it's going to be as easy, I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think it's going to be as easy to repeal this as some might think. And I don't know for sure that the governor would sign it. I know what he said recently, but I haven't talked to him. Maybe you have, but I haven't talked to him. So I think to me the safest thing to do is figure out a way to get a lawsuit filed, to get this thing declared unconstitutional, null and void from the date that the legislature passed it. The other thing I want to say, and I promised Dan I'd do this, Lardale Sullivan's name came up when we were talking about this, and I want to make it very clear that Lardale is a staff attorney and a dadgum good one for the Senate. She does what she is told. She had nothing to do with this legislation. A senator, I don't know who, but a senator told her to do what she did. And that's why she did it. So I don't want to disparage Lardale.
Can I add something to that? Because I work with all the legislative staff lawyers on retirement, with Laura Gale, with Margaret Corley, with Stephanie Little. You're very talented lawyers who work for you, who are very dedicated to the best interests of this state and of the legislators that they work for. And it's a privilege to work with them. And I like all of them very much, both as people and admire them as colleagues. So they're not one, I wouldn't let anybody in my presence question their own.
I guess what I'm saying is, we've got to do something, folks, in my opinion, to repair the damage that's been done, and I think damage has been done. And I think it needs to be a lawsuit. I think we're taking a great risk by saying, well, let's wait and see what the legislature does next spring. Because I think there's going to be some people there trying to make sure the legislature's not going to do anything. Let's be honest.
If that is a motion, we're going to do a second motion.
Okay? Make it a motion to litigate. We can talk about how to litigate in a second, but I move that we litigate.
Look, can I just clarify, Treasurer, we've already, we've heard the recommendation that we wouldn't have standing as a system. The system doesn't have authority, for instance, to tell you to litigate. So we need to think about it in the perspective of what this.
I know what you're saying, and I think you're being, as usual, a good lawyer. I think what the senator wants us to do, if I get this wrong, you tell me, we take a vote of, okay, we want to litigate, and then we talk about how we'll litigate. Is that fair?
Can I make a suggestion for a motion based on where I think it's going?
Sure.
I think the best action you can take is to make a determination that if the system is sued by a taxpayer, that the board resolves that it will not defend Act 859 and would confess to a final judgment enjoining it from enforcing the Act. That's in my mind, the best.
I would also say that's
And I think that's what Senator Guillory meant. I think that's what the treasurer meant. Not want to put words in your mouth, but I can't always.
Well, I understand the senator's sentiment. I'm okay with he's okay. He wants to litigate. I appreciate that. I will tell you right now, if that's what we do, I would bring the lawsuit in my individual capacity as a taxpayer. And it won't cost the system anything.
Right. It won't cost them anything not to defend it either.
And if we choose to consent, it won't cost anything to file a pleading that says we consent. Now, if the Attorney General intervenes and says, no, I think this is a good law, then we'll just have a lively debate.
Well, the system will be out of it. You can consent. If you've got two people who are defendants, then the system still doesn't have to litigate the thing. You just sit on the sidelines. I know many times you're sued, your office is sued, where you're sued in your capacity as treasurer, and you're sued so that jurisdiction will be complete over your office as the holder of the public treasury, but you don't take a position because you don't need
Well,
to have one.
I will tell you this, if that's the approach we use and the system can step aside,
Right.
if somebody does intervene, say this is a good law, I'm gonna take some depositions. Okay, I'm gonna send out some subpoenas, and we will find out then what happened. But I'm okay with that if y'all are.
And what's can you clarify your recommendation again?
My recommendation would be that if the system is sued by a taxpayer seeking an injunction to prevent the enforcement of Act 859, that the board authorizes its lawyers to consent to judgment agreeing to such an injunction.
I'd like to make a motion.
I'll second that.
The motion is made, and I'll let you repeat it, Bob, if you don't mind.
That in the event that the Louisiana State Department system is sued by a taxpayer challenging the constitutionality of Act 859, that the Board of Trustees authorizes its lawyers to consent to a judgment that there be an injunction against the enforcement of that act by the system. I thought that's what you just said, Chairman.
That's exactly what I just said. I have a motion by Kevin Marcel, second by Herman Miller. Is there any objection to the motion? I see no objection, so move.
So the record will reflect that it passed unanimously?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to work with you. This was an interesting.
Bob and Denise, it was very good work.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very briefly, I would like to explain just a little bit about how the Senate operates, since this matter originated on the side of the Senate. A senator will contact a staff person, and the communication is between that senator and that staff person. Our rules of confidentiality would not permit the staff to discuss with any other senator what is taking place. That's the way the rules they operate now, and that's the way they have operated. The staff in the Senate are among the best owners that I've seen. In 43 years of lawyering, our staff lawyers are among the best that I have ever seen. And I just wanted to make that very clear. They were not part of any underhandedness, not part of any kind of shenanigans. They followed the rules of their employment, and they did that to the letter of the law. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Marcel.
So I want to address to the retirees whom this very system is for. And what I want to say is I want to apologize for a lack of communication from the board's behalf. It's from this whole issue, but there was a reason behind it, and that's what I want to talk about. I learned something about 7 years ago when I made lieutenant for the state police, going and following up on crashes, fatalities, that there was a new social media issue going on with blogs. Every time we had a fatality, we had people getting on different media outlets and having conspiracy theories about, this guy got killed, but they had someone else in the car, they gave him drugs, and it was one thing after another. Of course, the family read these blogs, and they would call me up, say, we need you to follow up on this. It's written in black and white, it has to be true. And we did. It wasn't long before we realized that was the state of our society today. And no matter what happened, however cruel that is the world we live in. You've read several things about this, our board not calling for an investigation. That was simply not true. From our July meeting, we called for an investigation. And to go further, so there was no hint of impropriety in this issue, we hired one of the nation's premier retirement system attorneys. And I should get a little plug from that right there. But the reason we did that is because we wanted the best to look at this issue and to give us a ruling on it. And I think we've gotten it. It simply wasn't true what you were seeing out there. The second issue you saw that was made on these blogs was that we were not going to call for a meeting, and we were going to postpone it until Lord knows when, or just hope that it went away. We took the first available date we could, which was today. Our attorney, after rendering a decision on it, was out of the country for 2 weeks in August. Our chairman, who is very vital, obviously, to this board, was out of the state for much of last month. This was the first available meeting we had. Did we respond? No, we didn't. We didn't respond to all these blogs and everything because we want to be a professional body, in which I think we are. We have the utmost integrity. We have the best system director out there. And anybody who's dealt with Irwin knows his reputation. Then you heard that we were going to be influenced, especially the state troopers on this board were being influenced by the colonel staff and the governor's office and Lord knows what else. And I've spoken earlier, whenever Bob Murphy got up and spoke, that I didn't receive any emails, phone calls, no pressure of any kind. The only pressure I received, the only bullying tactics I received was from the people that would have you believe that they were doing it on your behalf. Those were the bullying techniques I received. And I could show you the emails I've gotten over the last 2 months, and all of us have gotten, and a lot of them simply weren't true. They had some truth to some of them, but a lot of them simply weren't true. Let's look at the facts, because we're all, y'all retired troopers, and the state police deals with facts. The facts is that since 2009, this system has taken its assets from $250 million to over $600 million today, within 5 years. More than doubled our investments. We have, like I said before, we have the best system director out there. Irwin Phelps and his staff is second to none. We have an outstanding board. This board gets along on most issues. If we have a problem, we do get with each other and speak about them openly and honestly and transparently. I just think that we are the smallest state system out there, okay? Out of the 4 state systems, we're the smallest, but our investments have gone neck and neck with every other state system, with a very small staff, and it was not fair to our staff, it was not fair to our board members, the way we were being treated, but we took the high road. And I just think y'all owed an explanation. Each one of your retirees owed an explanation on why we were not communicating. Because if we were communicating to every time something came up, every thing that you read in a blog, then we would have been defending ourselves each and every day from statements that simply weren't true. So I just wanted to make that clear to y'all, what was going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Very well put, Mr. Kennedy.
Well, I appreciate the trustees and the troopers' comments. I really do. This is a tough business sometimes. It's a tough business. But I will tell you, I mean, I made no bones about this. I try not to personalize this. But the retirement systems are under the Department of Treasury. Now, the retirement systems are independent entities, but they've got to be housed somewhere in the state government. And the people through the Constitution put them under the Department of Treasury. And I, along with Kevin and Albert, sit on the boards of most of the retirement systems. We don't control them. I think that's a good thing. The boards are run by their members, and I think that's a very good thing. But we've got a $19 billion problem in terms of our unfunded accrued liability. And part of the reason we have that unfunded accrued liability is not because the troopers and the state employees and the teachers didn't pay into the system. They don't have a choice. It's taken out of your check. It's because, A, the state has not always contributed what it was supposed to contribute, and B, the legislature used to, and a long time ago, Kevin and Albert and others have helped clean it up. A long time ago, the legislature used to go pass a special bill giving special treatments to people without putting up the money. Now, that's what happened here. And you can pretty it up all you want to. But that's what happened here, and I think this entire board is owed an explanation about what happened. And I think I would like, I think we're not going to get it, but I think the legislative boards involved, and the governor's executive council, and the state troopers involved do owe this board an explanation. And they owe the taxpayers an explanation, and they owe the troopers an explanation, because we've all been put in a hell of a spot. So I agree with your eloquent comments, but I think this entire board is an explanation. We didn't do anything wrong here. Nobody on this board who's here did anything wrong. Somebody did. I'm going to say it again. There's only been one immaculate conception that I'm aware of, and it wasn't this bill. It came from somewhere.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Phelps, I was just, when is our next board meeting?
Next scheduled board meeting. Excuse me. Next scheduled board meeting is September the 17th.
Okay. What I would just like to say to the members, certainly Treasurer Kennedy, I'd like to help her work on the lawsuit.
Let's file the lawsuit together. We can do it next week.
If we can do it proportionally with our salaries, legislative versus treasurer salary. But
I'll pick up the tab.
I want to say though, just to those in the audience and those who may be back home, if somehow this did not get filed by the time of the next board meeting, I'll be right back ready to address and urging the board to file litigation, and if anybody else. But I mean, this is the presumption that litigation will be filed, and that's what I would like to see. And if it is, then I think it kind of releases the board from that. Otherwise, I'll be right back here encouraging that of the board. So that's it for me.
Any other comments, any other questions? Can I get a motion when adjourned?
Make a motion.
Stay here. Motion by Kevin Morcell, second by Senator Gilbert. Any objections?